This is Charlie Liggett from the World of Odyssey podcast, and you are watching the World of Odyssey Oddcast. Take it away, guys.
Hey everybody, this is Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And I'm tired.
We are all tired. Thank goodness it is a long weekend. This is episode 123 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast. What are we talking about today, Victoria?
We're talking about Showdown with the Shepherd, which is like Imagination Station book number too many. There's too many of these books.
Victoria's very excited about it, as you can tell.
I didn't like this book.
First, we have some news things to talk about. We had the intro just happened right there with Charles from the World of Odyssey podcast, and he almost knows what the name of our podcast is. He's on Facebook and iTunes now, so check that out there too. I just did a very short guest review video talking about the first Imagination Station book again. That's on the YouTube channel, so you can go look at that.
Have you already done that?
Yeah, I did it last week.
I didn't know about that.
John Fornoff, as some of you may remember, we're talking about how he was diagnosed with cancer a while ago, and there was a fundraiser for his treatments. The treatments are going exceedingly well right now. Thank you all for your prayers, and please keep them coming for him. Speaking of cancer, we talked about last episode before that, Laurie Treitel passed away, the voice of Dr. Lily Graham. The character has now been recast with Kay Bess, and she will debut in that role in the episode Met His Match. So there have been a bunch of new episodes. We just had a recording session last week, and they recorded a bunch of episodes, which I think are for next year's AIOC season. So they recorded Drake and the Time That Time Forgot. So new Drake the Cosmic
Drake
Copper
episode.
Drake and the Time That Time Forgot. The Last Straw, which is a Parker episode. There's Met His Match, which is a dating episode for Whit and Connie. Not Whit and Connie with each other, obviously, but Whit and Connie separately trying to find dates, which involves a character coming back from the past. I'm not going to say who.
Do you know who?
Well, they like showed the voice, a second of the voice on the video clip, but for people who haven't seen it, I won't spoil it.
Wait, no, tell me who.
I'll tell you later.
No, type it, and then you can have my reaction. Who? Oh. Okay.
So Whit and Connie are both trying to find romance. Someone shows up.
What?
And you got Victoria's reaction.
What is this?
It only makes sense, Victoria.
I hate that it makes sense.
Other episodes recorded were Divided We Fall and Rewinding the Big Picture, and there might have been other names as well. Those are the ones I gleaned. Another person who passed away was June Foray, who was an extremely, extremely prolific and famous old-time VA. She passed away very shortly ago, just 2 months shy of her 100th birthday. And she had one cameo on Odyssey as Madge, the coffee shop owner in part 1 of The Other Side of the Glass. So she only ever cameoed on Adventures in Odyssey, but it was like a big deal because she was a super famous VA from way back in the day. And she was 2 months shy of turning 100. So
I'm not over that thing that you just...
yeah, if you really want to know who shows up for either Connie or for Whit, or for neither, just unrelated, you can go back on the Adventures in Odyssey Facebook page and find the video where they talk about it, and then at the end, and then you'll see, or you'll hear and figure it out, because it's not hard to figure out from the voice.
No.
Now, that's the end of the news. Time to talk about the book. This is,
as
you can tell, Victoria is very excited about it, not giving away anything about it. Showdown with the Shepherd is the 5th Imagination Station book, written by Marianne Herring and Brock Eastman.
I just say I'm mad, but this is also the highlight of my night.
Written by Marianne Herring and Brock Eastman, not Paul McCusker on this one. What happens in this book, Victoria?
So, in this book,
Beth and Patrick?
Thank you. Beth, you can tell us an impact.
I knew exactly what that pause was.
So Beth and Patrick go back in the Imagination Station program, and they go to...
What are they looking for this time, Victoria?
They meet David, and so it's like David and Goliath going on, and as usual, it's just classic David and Goliath retelling. They don't really add anything new, but
they do.
What's his face? What's that guy's name?
Hugh.
The guy who stole Wit's ring.
Hugh.
What?
Hugh.
Hugh. You just got really quiet all of a sudden, so I can hear you. Hugh is on the bad guy side. He's like on Goliath's side and stuff.
The Philistines is what they're called,
apparently
Victoria.
I hiccups now. Yeah, the Philistines, that's what they're called. And they almost get the ring. Everything happens like normal, David and Goliath and stuff. And then Beth and Patrick almost get the ring back from Hugh at the end, but then he like kind of disappears and stuff. And then Beth and Patrick come out of the Imagination Station, and they're like, we didn't get the ring. And Whit was like, well, that's a waste of time. I should just ship you off to where you originated from. That doesn't happen, but I wish it did.
Also, what doesn't happen is what you said about the story going the way it did, because that was the most interesting thing
right, yeah.
in the book, is that things didn't go the way they were supposed history.
To go. Yeah, that's what his deal is. He's trying to, like, tell them, the catapults. Yeah, that's what I forgot.
I think this might be my favorite book so far, because it's like they're like changing history. There's someone antagonistic to them who's also from the future, who's like trying to manipulate history, and so it's like it makes it way more interesting.
Yeah. So Hugh tells the Philistines how to create catapults, and they create a couple so they can like use them against them. And so Beth and Pat and David, they go on like a little mission, and they destroy the catapults, and it takes a couple minutes, but it works. Like, once the catapults start firing, they're like, it doesn't work, and I'm like, that's because you all suck, and then it like works on the second throw of the catapult, and...
All because Patrick severely overestimated David's ability to imitate an owl.
Ability to what?
Imitate an owl.
Yeah.
Because he's like, I thought that you signaled that we had to stop. And he's like, no, I didn't. And they was like, that was a real owl.
And I'm like, you're all idiots.
So...
But, okay, the time travel in this story is so stupid. And let me lay out the reasons why it would cause such a paradox. If anyone knows anything about time travel, you know that this causes an immediate paradox. So they go into the past, which is already crap because we know that's not how the Imagination Station works, to rewrite time, and apparently like the ring works as a remote or whatever dumb stuff is happening.
No,
so,
it's Elizabeth's pinky, Victoria.
It's so stupid. And so like Hugh can travel whenever he wants. And Whit can't go in the Imagination Station because life hates them. And
that's basically it.
And so...
There's no other feasible reason, honestly.
So he was, like, screwing with time and, like, changing everything. And he's trying to change it so that the future's changed. But if he's doing things that will change the future in a way that might make it so the Imagination Station's not created... And if it's not created, they wouldn't be there in the first place. So they're, like, gonna destroy the universe through his stupid, paradoxical ideas, and no.
At the very least, if Hugh changed the story of David and Goliath, then in the future he wouldn't know that he would need to change it because it would change what he knew. So
that's what
either way...
frustrated me. I was like, you're already gonna lose... Because you know how this story goes. If you didn't know how this story went, then you wouldn't have the knowledge to take it back in time. And, oh my gosh, it's just so frustrating.
Either way, it's your, like, basic grandfather paradox.
I was watching Milo Murphy's Law last week, and they released a new episode, and that show has time travel in it. It's like done by the people who did Phineas and Ferb. It's a Disney show. And they go into the future, and at one point, one of the characters is like hit in the head with an orange, and he like, or some other fruit, and he picks it up. He's like, an orange. And then later, they go back in time so that there are two versions of them there. And then one of them like is trying to get their attention, like the original versions of them. So then he like pulls the orange out of his pocket and he throws it at him. And then the person's like, oh, an orange, and it just copies the entire thing. And then the two characters are just staring at each other, and he's like, wait, then where did the orange come from if you're the one who threw it? And he's like, from my pocket. And he's like, no, but if you threw it, where did it come from? And then
it's a juju, Victoria.
Repeat those lines like it's like who's on first,
yeah,
for like a good solid 30 seconds before they cut to something else. And I was like, these people know how time travel works for once. And it's like nice to see that in a show, even if it's like kind of like stupidly funny. But it's a good show, go watch it. Anyway, this book does not know how time travel works at all. It was bad time travel. It was like not... Okay, there's 3 levels of accuracy when it comes to time travel in my mind. All things fall into 3 columns. And the columns are going to be called this book, and then Doctor Who isn't always accurate, but it's the most accurate generally. When it gets good, it's really good and it's spot on. So like Doctor Who, with like fixed points in time and things that you can't change and things that you can change and stuff. And then there's Back to the Future, where they get a lot of stuff right, but they do have those little things that would cause paradoxes, and there are some things that don't make any sense. But you don't notice it till you're older, and then you're like, no, I can't let this ruin the movies for me. I'll try and overlook it, but it always niggles you in the back of your head, or whatever that expression's called. And then there's this, where it's just, everything's awful.
I was actually going to put this in the middle column, and I was going to, so on one end, we go from Homestuck, Imagination Station series, Fairy Tale Grand Magic Games arc.
Yeah, and then there's Fairy Tale Grand Magic Games arc, and we don't talk about that because that was just such a mess. We can't even delve into what a mess that is.
So yeah, from the get-go, and this was
but I'm not the only one who noticed that, right? Like, I rewatched Back to the Future a year ago, and I realized, like, everything makes sense in the first 2 movies, more or less, but, like, the 3rd movie screws everything up so much
I haven't watched the 3rd movie in, like, a decade. Could
possibly make sense within the time travel laws of this world, and they cause, like, 10 paradoxes. And
I'll take your word for it, because you're pretty good on time travel stuff.
Thank you. It's a high compliment.
So, yeah, my first comment, along the same lines, it's still very clear and exceedingly confusing how/that Whit very clearly knows the precise details of what's going to happen to them, given that he's still giving them extremely specific items to bring with them, and he explicitly states that he knows the purposes they will later serve. Like, he asked Beth what song she can play on the harmonica, and she's like, the alphabet and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or whatever. And he's like, okay, that'll work. And it's like, so he knows exactly when and how these things are going to be needed.
Do you think he's just, like, screwing with them or something like that?
That's my best theory at this point. Because I'm like, there's that. But nevertheless, we're still led to believe that Albert and Hugh are real people with real consequences and effects on the machine. Like, not just functions and subroutines of a program. So, I said this last time, but the only feasible explanation is that Whit is playing the biggest goof on them both. And that he can use the imagination station. And that...
That would make me so mad,
he's just been playing a goof on them the whole time and everything, and it's all just a normal program. The idea that they need to wear clothes and bring physical props into the station, the idea they need to return to the location where they got out of the imagination station, that's all unnecessary. He's just doing it to make it more immersive for them. And stuff like we said, he just figured out a way to sleight of hand, like the ring in and out of the station, and everything else he just lied about. I slapped floor.
Okay, but like, that would actually make this series not as terrible, though.
It's the only explanation.
And if it was all just a program and it was like one big Isaac the Chivalrous...
He wants to bring the Bible to life, Victoria, and it's not enough for them to think that that's a virtual reality program. Kids are too used to VR these days. They need to really think they're going back in time now.
That's No. This series is not that smart. At all.
I mean, hey, they pulled a Bioshock Infinite with Wit's Ring.
No, I think they did that by accident. They're not that smart.
So, speaking of the series as a whole, it's very given that this is the Imagination Station, it's super surprising to me that it took them 5 books, if you look at it, 5 books before they got to a Bible story, that they did 4 world history and then they finally got to the Bible. You'd think they would have
I guess that's
done
true.
more Bible stuff first and then gone to general history. I'm guessing the reason there is like the structure of the first arc, and they couldn't think of any treasures from the Bible that realistically they wanted to include in Lord Darkthorn's stores. But if I pull up my playlist of Imagination Station episodes, genre Imagination Station, from the top is like Imagination Station, Prisoner for Christ, Elijah, Lincoln. So we had 1, 2, 3. It was the 4th individual, like, not episodes, but stories altogether. It was the 4th one before they did something that wasn't the Bible. So it's surprising to me that they waited until the 5th story to do the Bible.
Actual Odyssey. Actually,
In
this
many
is
ways.
already reverse actual Odyssey, because Odyssey's good and this isn't. So, like...
So, yeah, like I said, this book already became the most interesting one so far as soon as we realized, like, we now have an antagonistic force moving through history with them, giving technological insight to their enemies. It does heighten the tension a little more, because it means...
I still thought it was boring.
Because the other books, it's like, apart from Beth and Patrick, everything's going to happen the way we know it should in history, but now it's like, now there's something that was already here before us that is changing history that we need to work against.
But Devin, if he... It's... okay. If he changes history and stuff like that, then... Couldn't we conclude that he hasn't changed history at all, since Beth and Patrick are still doing the same thing right now? Like, we can conclude that they stop him every single time, because...
Only if that was real time travel, Victoria.
But, like, they should be able to just stand in Wit's End and be like, hey, he can travel through time, he's messing with time, we must have already stopped him a bunch of times Victoria, in the future and in our past, because... Nothing's happened. Coming
back to Doctor Who, you're assuming that this is all fixed points in time. And that just true. Because things are good now means that nothing bad can happen in the past.
Okay.
And change history, yeah. So, yeah, given that Hugh grew up in 14th century England or whenever the War of the Roses was, I was like, at first, when this was happening, he's helping the Philistines, I'm like, there's no way on earth that he doesn't know the story of David and Goliath. And he should absolutely know what's going on, unless maybe he doesn't speak Latin, since that's probably the only way they taught scripture back then. But someone his rank, like in nobility, would almost certainly speak Latin. I was like, the other possibility is that he's all playing a ruse, which seems more likely, and he's trying to bait them out to use the siege device that he built, whatever it was, and then that is what turned out to have happened. He was being sneaky. I was glad then that Patrick immediately recognized the absurdity that he wouldn't know who David and Goliath were. And I was like, thank you, Patrick, for bringing some logic and sense to this story for once. I really have to give credit to Hugh for his, like, when he took Beth and he did, like, the whole disappearing trick and, like, the smoke and stuff. I was like, he's making really solid use of the whole, like, going back in time and wowing people with your future technology bit. And he's already from 600 years in the past from where we are. Like, it was...
He's a better time traveler than Beth and Patrick are, and he's, like, 600 years in the past from them.
That's
that not a good thing.
They were just talking on the RT podcast about, you know, it's an age-old question, right? Like, if you got sent back in time to, like, the Stone Age or whatever, or the Middle Ages or whenever, like, what would you be able to wow them with technology? Like, what actual useful knowledge would you have that they could understand, or technology would you be able to build with the tools they had that would show you, like, oh, I'm a magical wizard who knows all this stuff? Or would you be like, I know how to use a phone, don't know how to build one, so can't show it to you, but believe me. And Hugh was great.
Stop making this book sound smart. It makes me mad.
Hugh was a great example of someone who went back in time, and he's actually like, yes, I do know how to make, like, smoke bombs, and yes, I actually know.
Yeah, but the thing is, Beth and Patrick are stupid.
This is the thing that really impressed me, that Hugh, given he has a pretty cushy societal role, he's pretty upper nobility, that he had the technical knowledge to construct a catapult using tools from like 2,500 years earlier is not an easy task. it makes me look forward to a book, which I think the next book is. I can't remember for sure, but I think so. The next book will be set in the past for Beth and Patrick, but it will be the future for Hugh. So I'm excited to see how that goes down now. Go in the other direction and be in a period of time between the two of them. So that'll be...
Do you think, like, he's gonna go to modern day and he gets, like, hit by a car and Beth and Patrick just pick up the ring off his corpse and they're like, well, that was easy, and then they just go back?
That's exactly what's gonna happen. Beth, speaking of the kids being stupid, the least stupid thing in this entire series that they've done so far was Beth figuring out how to use the harmonica to send a message like that by playing the alphabet and just stopping on the letters, which, it's like, that's not a code that would be able to be a secret in modern times, but because she's in ancient Israel and they don't know the alphabet song, she was able to use that to send the message.
Okay, I was thinking about that though, and I was like, if someone did that, my mind would maybe not go to ABC's.
Oh, go to Twinkle
the
Twinkle
first
Little
time.
Star.
It'd probably go to Twinkle Twinkle Little Star or something else, because that song is used for like everything.
That's a good point. I was going to say, like, it's interesting how he's like, oh, that's weird, Beth stopped it.
I was thinking, like, it's a good thing that he figured out she was doing the alphabet song and not a different song. And he was like, oh, someone's playing Twinkle Twinkle Little Star. And then he walked away and she was never found.
That's a really good point, because I was thinking about it. Because I'm like, I feel like I would probably be like Patrick in that situation where it's like, oh, that's weird, she was playing it and then she stopped. And then the second time you're like, oh, she stopped again, but in a different spot. And then by the third letter, you start paying attention to where in the song she stopped. And then you start realizing that she's like sending letters. But that's a really good point, because
Thank you.
The alphabet is the same
That was my first thought when I read that part. I was like, I want to figure that out, probably.
Also the same as Baba Black Sheep. That's a good point. I'm not sure if my mind would default to the alphabet or Twinkle Twinkle Little Star.
I was but like, yeah, my mind might, but it probably wouldn't, because I'm dumb.
I was like super crazy impressed that Beth thought of that, because
and
I was
now
like,
you're not.
if I was in
come
that,
to my side.
If I was
not impressed by anything.
If I was in that situation and I'm like, I have a harmonica and I need to send a coded message, if I didn't have any kind of reference, like a Morse code table or anything like that, and I didn't like have any pre-planning, even if I knew how to play the alphabet song, like if I could play music, I'm sure, like, even if it was a piano in front of me and it's like you can only send a message through that.
I'm not good with harmonicas, so I would just get killed.
I never understand how people can, like, play cohesive melodies on a harmonica, but yeah, if you put a piano...
I always, like, breathe out and then I breathe in. I'm like, wow, this is shrill, and I want to throw a harmonica out a window.
If you put a piano in front of me and you're like, you have to send a message using only what you play, and I didn't have any kind of reference, I could only use what was in my head, I doubt I never would have figured out, like, oh, just play the alphabet song. I would have just been sitting there and trying... If anything, I probably would have, like, tapped out the number of notes of, like, the number that letter is, and that's all I could have come up with.
Yeah, that's what I would have done.
Which would be
honestly, if I was Beth, when Whit's, like, giving all this stuff out, and then he'd, like, give me a harmonica, I'd be like, nah, get that crap away from me. I don't like harmonicas.
Give
and
me
then
a
I'd just
guitar.
Be tied up.
Give me a guitar
and
or something.
I'd just be stuck, and I'd be like... And then a part of me would be like, but you don't have a harmonica. And then I'd be like really smug about it though, instead of being upset that I can't get out. I'd be like, yeah, I don't like harmonicas because I can't play them.
It also made me wonder, because like Beth was able to figure this out, did the idea just come to her to do that? Or did she figure it out because Whit asked what song she knew and she said the alphabet song and something else and he's like, oh, that'll work? Was it that clue?
Maybe. I didn't think of that.
Made her figure out what she thought back?
I think I was like half asleep when I read this book, honestly. I was really bored at the time, and I was like, oh yeah, I gotta read this.
Yeah.
I'd rather be reading something else.
So the other gift that Whit gave them was a knotted cord for Patrick, which ended up, it wasn't the cord that was important, but it was like a guide on knots. It was like each knot was a different knot, and it was just so Patrick could look at the different knots and like see how to tie them. And it occurred to me, coming back to the whole, is this time travel or is this a program thing? Not in the past, it's like Whit sent them very precise gifts to line up with precise circumstances to what was going to happen, lining up with what would happen when they went and interacted with something that had already happened in history. In this case, he wasn't even sending them things that would help them out in the story of David and Goliath. He gave them items that would line up, in both cases, with circumstances caused specifically by Hugh being in the story already. So that means that not only did Whit know how Beth and Patrick would interact with the story, he knew how Hugh was already going to interact with the story, building on the one hand, building the catapult and the knots, and then taking Beth and the harmonica. And this further cements the theory that Whit is just playing a big goof on these kids, and Hugh and Albert and the ring and everything is just an elaborate suite of adventures across history. There's never any problem with the imagination station in the first place or anything. Whit is just being a sneaky beaky. What?
Counterpoint to your theory. Whit has the imagination station shut down so no one else can go on it. Unless he just really likes Beth and Patrick, and he's just like, hey, you two are new to town.
It's about the
Why don't you
immersion,
just
Victoria.
hug the imagination station for the next 5 months and let no one else ever go on it?
Yeah, okay, but hasn't it only been like 2 or 3 days?
No, I think it's been more than that.
Also, maybe this isn't the normal imagination station. He has like 1 billion of them. Maybe they're not from Odyssey. For all they know, the regular imagination station's still up in the Bible
They're
room
actually
running
in like the
normally.
room of requirement or something like that.
The room of requirement?
Yeah, it's Harry Potter.
Okay. I wasn't sure if you meant to say room of consequences. My second guess was
I
was Harry
did,
Potter.
but I'm really tired still, and that's the thing from Harry Potter.
Okay. I was gonna say
I wanted to say the inspiration station, but like none of the words wanted to come out of my mouth.
Well, no, I could totally see this, especially because this is the OG imagination station. I mean, not the OG one, but it's
junk, is what you're saying.
It's not the post hiatus one. It's not the one where it's rooms and hallways. So upstairs, Beth and Patrick don't realize that there is another imagination station upstairs that the kids have just been using this whole time. Which, like, oh yeah, this is the only imagination station. Don't tell anyone else about it.
Kids go upstairs, and then they're like, "Where does that door lead?" And it's like the kids who go up there never go out.
Yeah.
Don't go up there. And then they find out, like, so one day they hear a kid mention the word, like, oh yeah, I was just upstairs the other day, and they're like, upstairs? There's an upstairs? I thought there was only the one floor. Dumb children is what they are. They are dumb children, Devin.
I was not expecting the common theme between this and Swept Away Part 2 was a threat that I did not expect to actually get executed in the story. I did not think the catapult was actually gonna get off a shot properly. But it started firing and then it broke down. So they actually got some like flaming rocks. It didn't make it to the camp. It like landed in the brook.
See, the thing is, like, they destroyed it once, but they probably had plans.
I was like,
for
yeah,
it,
they did.
So they can just build another one. I'm like, you basically did nothing.
He did tell them how to make it, and the Philistines can build more of them. However, if the Israelites go kill them all, then they can't.
I guess that's true.
Yeah. The ending chase and the negotiation with Hugh, like, it actually had me interested at the end. And now that Hugh's gone, but they have the ring, I'm like, this is interesting now.
Okay, I couldn't remember if they got the ring or not
like,
at the end.
Hugh put on the ring. He was actually about to give them the ring because they're like, they're like, only we know how to use it. You're trapped here unless you give it to us. He was about to do it, then the bear showed up and he freaked out, put the ring on. Imagination station showed up. He jumps into it. Door starts closing. Everyone jumps into it. And they're like, okay, we're inside it. But Hugh is gone. But
I thought Hugh was just going to go back into, like, the normal world. And I was like, oh, this will be interesting. And then he's just not there. Maybe he's invisible, Devin, and he is in the real world. Who knows what kind of crap this series will pull next.
Who knows? So they have the ring, though, which I'm interested now because the ring is what they were using to track Hugh. And it's not like they can look for anomalies in history to pop up because it's not real-time travel. So how do they find him? So like I said, the next book takes place at Plymouth, which I believe is 1622. So that puts...
Are you saying it's not real-time travel because that's your theory, or because it genuinely is not real-time travel?
I'm going to say both.
Okay, what do you mean by it's not real-time travel?
It clearly can't be, like you said. It's, like, completely makes no sense as real-time travel.
Yeah. Well, so does Grand Magic Games, but apparently...
Yeah, okay, so my point is, I don't know how they're going to find Hugh, but the next book takes place at Plymouth, so that's, like, several centuries ahead of Hugh's time. I can't think of any huge technological differences that would, like, shock and scare him, but I'm sure they're there. I just can't think of them because history is too homogenized in that area in my mind. Because that's a huge time gap. I'm sure there's something that he's going to be like... If one of these
books has, like, a countdown, like, giant clock thing, and then dragons appear, I'm gonna scream. Like...
Hey, we had rocks already, so nothing's...
They were so stupid.
That would also be explained...
But of the Dwayne The Rock picture.
That would also be explained if it's like, hey, this was just a program all along. It's like, I wonder how much I can make them believe.
It's like, I wonder if I can make them think
I
they're
wonder
gonna die.
how many supernatural mythical creatures I can drop into these historical adventures and they'll still believe that this is real time travel.
Do you think he like goes home to Jason and he's like, oh my gosh, and Jason's like, and him have a betting pool, and Jason's like, have they figured it out yet? He's like, no, they haven't.
He has two betting pools. One is how much he can mess with Beth and Patrick, and the other is how many times he can make Renee have a complete breakdown of her sense of reality. So this book has actually made me look forward to what's to come, because the whole, like, Hugh against them dynamic of, like, an antagonistic party that's also traveling through time with them has added a lot more interesting stuff than what we had already. So it's like, it's still not as interesting as the regular show, but it's a lot better than it was before.
Before I forget, the answer to this is probably no. Have you listened to The Legend of Sperry McGurk yet?
I have not.
Okay, never mind. I have. Twice. In the same day. Almost consecutively.
Huh. Okay.
Yeah, I know. It surprised me too.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
2 goof alerts. Shocking, right? I know, from the guide. The 2 things in the guide about this are both goof alerts.
What? There's mistakes in this series. It's not like I spent this entire review just pointing out the inaccuracies.
The first is a goof alert. In the cover of Showdown with the Shepherd, I'll put it up here, Goliath's helmet is not historically accurate to that of a Philistine. The real helmets look as if they have a scrubbing brush on the top. This is a picture of a real Philistine shown here. And since Victoria can't see it,
Does it look like one of those horse helmets?
I'm putting up a picture of Marvin the Martian.
Oh, yeah, it looks like one of those horse helmets.
And the other one, goof alert. Showdown with the Shepherd includes the illustration at left. We think that it shows a working catapult, but we're not sure. Our engineering team was out the day we worked on the picture. It may actually be another ancient weapon called a trebuchet. Anyway, we hope it looks scary. The interesting thing about this goof alert is they're not saying, oh, at the moment we had to submit this illustration at the time we didn't know if it was a trebuchet or a catapult. Since we have realized, oh, we were right or oh, we were wrong. They're saying, this happened forever ago, and we still don't know. Our engineering team was out that day, and we just haven't asked them since, and we haven't gone on the internet to look at the difference between them. So we still don't know. We still don't know.
We don't know how to use Google, so we can't figure it out.
We didn't care enough to look it up.
Have you ever noticed how like everything in the
similar,
guide is written
still
in a way that makes it sound like Chris is reading it?
Sorry?
Have you ever noticed how everything in the guide is written in a way that makes it sound like Chris is reading it? It's just like, anyway, we don't know the answer to that. You never hear a sentence like that in a textbook or like any other kind of guidebook or something like that.
Yeah, that one really got to me. I was like, okay, so you didn't know the day you had to submit the illustration. What happened the next day? I don't know how close the publishing of the guide was to this, but I don't think they were writing the guide the day they submitted this illustration, because the guide contains information about books after this.
Honestly, we should just figure it out ourselves.
Honestly, as I'm saying this, I'm like, I feel really dumb for the fact that I didn't look into it, because it's like the designs can slightly vary between them, and it's more about like the mechanism of how it fires, so it can be kind of hard to tell from the illustration. And I've never entirely understood. I know the trebuchet more kind of has like a counterbalancey, like a
I don't know
and it's
about
like
catapults.
the secondary flip thing.
Okay, I know that there are catapults that spin like that.
See, that's not a catapult, that's a trebuchet.
Oh. And if it doesn't do that, it's a catapult?
Yeah, catapult is just like you pull it back and then it springs.
And what did they have in the book?
Well, from the illustration, it's like, it's hard to tell exactly. I think it's probably a catapult, but we don't know for sure.
Well, it definitely worked as a catapult, not a trebuchet.
Well, either way, it flings a giant thing in the air, so...
Yeah, I know, but it didn't say anything about it spinning around when it flung it.
Yeah, okay, but illustration...
It was like, it shot it, and then it broke.
Yeah.
So,
final thoughts on the book, Victoria?
I didn't like it. It's interesting what they're trying to do, but I don't like what they're trying to do. It's basically the best way I can put it. I'm glad that they're trying to do something new and be more interesting, but I feel like this plot, overall arching plot, has been done to death, and I'm not really interested in reading about it in something else, because I've seen it be done in like TV shows and blah, 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 blah. I would rather watch 20 episodes of The Master doing this and Doctor Who than read like 500 boring books about it happening with an uninteresting guy named Hugh. Like,
Yeah. That's a good way to put it. I mean, the thing is, while this did add another dimension...
And the time travel doesn't make any sense.
While this did add another dimension to the story, that's only brought us from a one-dimensional story to a two-dimensional story.
And it's a cliche two-dimensional story.
It's very cliche. It's like the most basic time travel. But we've moved from like standard time travel to standard time travel now.
Yeah.
Bog standard.
It was like you were in the negatives before and now you're
just come
neutral.
up to zero.
So you're not really it's not giving us anything new.
It's an improvement.
It is interesting what you said about like him being able to make stuff that they wouldn't be able to make and him having that technical know-how.
Yeah, it's like it's an improvement from the previous books, but it's still not an improvement on an average story, let alone a good story.
See, that's why I didn't really like it.
I was just excited because I'm like, it's better than before, so it's an upward trend. I'm extrapolating really hard here, Victoria. I'm ignoring all statistical significance of this slope.
Like, I feel like it would have been a lot better if they focused at least a little bit more. Maybe if it was longer and they focused a bit more on, like, actual David and Goliath stuff. They didn't really focus on that much. It's like they kind of made it the bookends and a little bit in the middle, and I'm like, this is called Showdown with the Shepherd. I want to actually see the shepherd and literally feel the build up to the showdown. I feel it on their side, but not on David and Goliath's
Even
side.
though this was a book, they literally did the, like, camera pan away from the death through violence. They didn't even describe the moment of David flinging the stone and killing Goliath. It was like Beth looked away and Patrick, like, gulped and was like, yep, happened how I thought it would. Like, they didn't even describe the act of it. I was like...
So, yeah. I don't know. I guess I'll give it like a 2 out of 5. Not terrible, but not great either.
I'm going to give this one a 2.5. We finally hit 50% with these books. Maybe I gave previous ones higher. I don't know. But it's like we finally came
My favorite one is still the Telemachus
to
one.
Baseline. An IQ of 100. Eyesight of 20/20 pre-World War II. Or
Telemachus, they actually gave me characters. I think that's the problem with these. They give me cookie-cutter layout, copy and paste characters from Magic Treehouse books.
There's so little time. Like, the length of this story in David's story, it starts with him going to the camp, to the valley of whatever, and then it ends with him killing Goliath. It's like, the amount of story that we actually spanned here is so short within the span of this book.
And the thing with Magic Treehouse is, they did have the overarching storylines, but the thing is, they didn't take over, and if they did take over, then that was the whole book.
That's what the Merlin missions are for.
Yeah, exactly. That's what the Merlin missions were. And even then, they devote time to actually, like, teaching you historical, interesting things and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then they made the resource guides, too. I love those so
much. Instead of, like, the storyline of the place they're going to being the bookends, it's their own storyline being the bookends. So you kind of get all this interesting stuff, and then it's like, oh yeah, and also,
unless I guess it's
if you're reading this, then that's what's going on, because the books were written in a way to make you feel included. If, like, the first book you're reading is book 14, but why are you reading book 14 in the first place? You should start with 1, you idiot. And, like, but they were written in a way to make you feel included. These, if someone picked up, like, book 6, and they're like, I don't understand, even with, like, the terrible summaries at the beginning, nothing makes sense, and there's still no commas.
Even if you've read all the books, it still doesn't make sense. So welcome. That's the ultimate accessibility, Victoria. It's just like,
the focus is on the wrong part, and there are things that are either way too complicated for the target audience that they have for the books to understand, or way too simplistic for them to be interested.
What it is, it's like that psychological study about why there are only bad jokes in Christmas crackers, where it's like, if there's a good joke in a Christmas cracker, some portion of the party will always find it unfunny, and you've now put a divide in the crowd between people who found it funny and people who groaned at it. If it's a bad joke, everyone groans
Is
at it.
that actually why they do
And
that?
you find emotional solidarity in everyone by all going like, that was a terrible joke. And it helps bring people closer together.
No, I want
in a
them to
social
have
situation.
good jokes.
If
If it goes over my head, I'll actually maybe have some respect for it. I just have, like, negative respect
well, that's
for
why
stuff
I
that
love
tells me
the
bad
ones you buy in
jokes.
Canada, because then you can read the joke in French and it's harder to understand, which makes it funnier, because then it's like you appreciate the joke more.
You know, French jokes and things are usually, like, way more funny. Like, puns in French are always really good, and then the English translations are always terrible.
But my point is, that's why the series is so bad. It's the same thing you said. It's like you have the people who've read every book, and then you have like the accessibility for like people who just pick up partway through the series. That's the accessibility, is that people come in, they're like, I don't understand what's going on. And people who've read every book, they're like, hey, I also don't understand what's going on.
Yeah, but that's not a good thing.
Solidarity, fraternity.
The series isn't interesting, and Magic Treehouse is interesting. And no, Magic Treehouse had? It had character. It slowly introduced you to, like,
Teddy.
different aspects of the characters, and it built them up, and it gave them development, and they, like, had progression, and Beth and Patrick stay the same in, like, every single book, and they never develop. And the only reason I really like Telemachus over the other ones is because I was already invested with the characters. The Emperor's name, I always get wrong, so I'm not even going to try, Honorius. The reason I enjoyed it so much was because it had so much stuff with him, and I was really invested with his character. I really liked
his role in that book. That was excellent.
And he, like, had such a good, like, storyline in the book, but I feel like you would appreciate it more if you already knew who the character was and stuff like that. Yeah. And that's the reason why Telemachus was the best book, because I already had an emotional bond to the characters, because Telemachus parts 1 and 2, they are some of my favorite Odyssey episodes. Whereas, like, Beth and Patrick, I do not care at all about them. So, if they're in trouble, like, they're being attacked by Dwayne The Rock Johnson, I don't care. I'm like, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, I like you more than these two kids. You're in Moana, and you're super awesome. Even though you were, like, a tooth fairy, or maybe that was Vin Diesel. I don't know, you guys look the same. But, like, it was... I think I got off on the wrong point. But
I think
still...
so.
Bottom line, Vin Diesel is better than these books are.
They do have a lot of very similar roles, cinematographically speaking.
I know, and apparently they don't like each other or something like that, because they're both in Fast and Furious movies. And I feel like if I was watching the Fast and Furious movies, I'd just be like, I can't tell who's who. It's like when Barb and Elise stand next to each other.
I always think, like, of, like, the pacifier and, like, the one where he was, like, the football guy and he had the daughter.
I think that's called The Game Plan or something like that.
Yeah, that and the Tooth Fairy. It's like they're all the same movie.
I know. I always
I mean, the pacifier's an excellent
to tell
film.
the difference between them, I was like, one's the Game Plan guy and one's the pacifier guy. I can tell the difference between them now because they, like, their faces are different, their voices are different, they have different skin tones and stuff like that. And one is much more likable than the other one. And who do you think I like more?
I don't know. They're both pretty legit people, from what I know.
I don't know. I just happen to like one of them more than the other one. But, like, and they both play cartoon characters that are very popular now. Like, one is Maui and the other one's Groot.
Okay, that is who you're talking about.
Yeah. But I like Dwayne The Rock Johnson more, because he almost killed Beth and Patrick. And you can right back to the book, all full circle.
Yeah, okay, good. So yeah, 2.5 for me, 2 for you. I think the books are on an upward trend, but this is an upward trend with, like, 1 degree of freedom and almost no sample size, so I don't...
So, like, the first one was...
It's a p-value of, like, 0.7 right now. So... Like,
here, second one was Telemachus.
My confidence interval.
Can't remember anything about the third one.
Stellar.
I think I had a night. Fifth one was just bad, and this one's, like, neutral or something like that. So, Telemachus is still the best one, I think. Is this one your favorite? Or...
Now that we're talking about Telemachus, the characters, it's like, I feel like I'm pretty...
Telemachus was so good!
I'm pretty even with Telemachus in this one, but for very different reasons, is the thing. So it's hard to compare
Because
them.
this one was more interesting, but Telemachus had actual character and stuff like that and good storylines.
Yeah, it's like this one was a better shonen and Telemachus was a better shoujo, I guess.
But shoujo is... No, I can't say in good confidence that
Shoujo's better than shonen?
like...
It is.
Shoujo's better than shonen.
It
I mean,
is.
some of my favorite stories are kind of in that middle line.
Yeah.
They're technically considered shonens, but they're written more like shoujos.
Well, yeah,
So I
that's
can't
the
really-
ideal. But
Well, that's what Pandora Hearts is. So it's basically the argument, like, do you prefer
plot or character.
storylines over characters? And I always prefer characters over storylines, but sometimes, like, the story that focuses more on one actually pulls off the other aspect better.
Yeah.
That I can't really come up with a decisive answer because I've seen both do the other aspects really well while maintaining that they are like that one aspect
Mhm.
in like mainly, and I'm like, but you do the other one so much better.
Yeah, I've seen a post that wasn't even talking about the shonen shoujo dichotomy, but it basically said like a story with great characters but a crap plot is still like, you know, you can still get through, it's still enjoyable for the characters, but a story with a great plot and crap characters is irredeemable.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think
'Cause
that's why I prefer shonen to shoujo. Or
there are
shoujo to shonen.
characters where I like finish a story and stuff like that, and by the end of it I'm like, that was a great story, but like the author could give me anything about these characters. It could just be them like getting ready for bed and like brushing their teeth, and I would want to read it because I love them so much
And
stuff
fandom
like that.
fandom is built...
And it's kind of like the same thing where you have that one favorite singer. Like I saw this post about Idina Menzel a lot after Frozen came out, where it's like she could sing me the phone book and I would like tear up. It would be so beautiful and stuff.
Yeah, fandom is built on characters and not on plot. I mean, you can build a little bit on plot, but the heart is built on characters. Like, you can't, like, that's why AUs are such a thing, because the plot doesn't matter as long as you have the characters at its core. I mean, I guess you could scrap the characters and write, like, different stuff in that universe, like, stick your own OCs into the same universe, like, especially for stuff like Homestuck or whoever. It's like, they're playing Spurb now, so it's like you've taken the shell of the story and put your own characters into the plot. But at its core,
the interesting thing about AUs is how they affect the characters. Like, I have my own AUs for my own story, and, like, for example, Shax is different in every single one because of the different environments. Shax is raised differently in every single one, like, spends different amounts of time with James and stuff. And the amount of time they spend with James is equal to the amount of time that they spend being a better person, versus the amount of time they spend with negative influences, they become a worse person and stuff. So, like, they are a different amount of quote-unquote good person in every single different AU.
I think the takeaway point here, to bring it back to the Imagination Station books, is that while the books are not strong on plot or on characters, it does still try to push more for the story than it does for the characters, because
That's not a good thing.
Beth and Patrick are literally one-dimensional, and that really makes the story suffer because we have no emotional investment in the characters whatsoever. And the plot changes up between every book because they're in a different place in history, and there's just like the faintest carrying over of the overarching stuff. Beth and Patrick we have to put up with constantly.
See, that's why I'm always going to
So that's why
advocate that
they need
Magic
to-
Tree House is a better series, because I'm emotionally invested in Jack and Annie's lives.
I mean, they didn't
because
give
of how
them
they're
that
affected
much
by
characterization.
everything.
Let's not give too much credit to those books.
I know, but at least they were interesting, and Teddy was like my favorite character, and I really loved him.
I feel like since we spent enough time talking about it, we should clarify.
You know what they should do? They should pull a Teddy and get them a puppy. Then I'd like this series a lot more, probably.
That would be solid.
Yeah.
I think we spent enough time talking about it. We should probably explain for people who aren't up and up on their anime. The anime is commonly categorized into, I guess, lots of categories, but two of the biggest categories are shonen and shoujo. Shoujo is literally Japanese for girl, and shonen is Japanese for boy. So it's like boy animes and girl animes. And
So shonen is more story-based, shoujo is more character-based.
Is the best way to like describe what the difference in the actual
and
story
shonen
is.
also usually has a lot of fighting in it, and
It's like-
shoujo tends to be more slice of life kind of stuff.
Usually,
but
the
vary.
like the deciding factor is a shonen. like a boy anime, a shonen anime is, it is you have the plot at the cost of you write your plot at the cost of characterization, and shoujo, a girl anime, is you're writing your characters at the cost of plot. Like obviously, story can have both, but like the deciding factor, if you have to put in one camp or the other, is what is more important to your story.
And there are series that
I much prefer to have good characters with a weak plot than a weak characters.
You can tell right away which one's a shoujo and which one's a shonen.
The amount of sakura petals.
Yeah, that too. The amount of flower petals sometimes can have something to do with it. Sometimes you can tell right away if the main character, like what gender they are. But some shonens, lots of shonens do have female protagonists, and lots of shoujos do have male protagonists, so that's not always a deciding factor. There are shows that are like have basically an equal amount of both, even though they're categorized.
And there are other categories in a show. It's just those are two of the big ones.
My favorite series, Pandora Hearts, is technically shonen, and like also Madoka Magica and stuff like that are shonen, but they have like so much character and stuff that someone could probably make like a really compelling argument that there's something else. One of Devin's favorite shows, Brie, is, I think it's categorized as shonen, but it's always most people kind of up in the air because lots of people think it's 50-50.
Lots of people categorize it as shoujo. They're like, most sports anime are usually shonen, but Free specifically would probably be categorized as shoujo.
I'm kind of 50-50
not just
on it,
because
honestly.
of like
but
the fan
anyway,
service.
we should end this.
So, yeah, I just wanted to explain that because we were talking about it and actually connecting it back to the thing, and I'm like, lots of people probably are going to get this. And I want to preempt the comments of like every comment asking what we were talking about. So there you go.
TLDR: this series needs a puppy, and I will like it more.
So
and also Dwayne the Rock Johnson, eat the characters in this series, but not the puppy.
What are we talking about next time, Victoria?
Swept Away?
Yes.
Swept Away Part 1 and Part 2 and Tornado.
Correct. We're getting stormy again with more weather, more blustery days to come. Good episodes.
It's Wednesday.
Both of them.
Winnie the Pooh reference for the win.
Yeah. Okay, so that was that episode. Next time, Swept Away Part 2 and Tornado. Until then, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And it is so easy to make me riled up when you do time travel wrong.
And you've been watching The Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.